Thank you very much. It's great to have you here today, and I just wanted to make a couple statements and then open it up to your questions about this case. So we're here today, obviously there was a substantial story in the Associated Press the other day that was picked up both here and nationally about this Bobby Thompson case. It's a case that's received a lot of attention several years ago. It's received some attention in the last 6 months or so. It's heading towards trial in Cleveland, and it's a very concerning case. And the background is covered well in the AP story, but just to go through the very basics, it was a scam of a whole lot of money, millions and millions of dollars being raised, claimed to be raised for veterans of the Navy, naval veterans, and it turned out to be a scam, and that's not where the money went. And that is the essence of the prosecution. But there's more to the story than that. The story ends up being that most of the money that we can see coming out of that charity, either through a PAC that was created or through the giving of Bobby Thompson, who was the founder of the charity. Turns out it was a false name, but the founder of the charity, hundreds of thousands of dollars from the charity, either through his own giving or through a PAC giving. Again, didn't go to Navy veterans, it went to politicians. And you can see from the AP and from a lot of reporting out of Florida, just the sheer amount of money went to politicians. It went to very famous politicians, Mitt Romney, John McCain, Rudy Giuliani, Michelle Bachmann, Elizabeth Dole, Charlie Crist, Norm Coleman. It went to a lot of politicians that weren't nearly as famous, but for some reason, the person running this charity thought that they should get money. It went to a whole lot of Ohioans. And this is an interesting angle. We ask ourselves, why in the world is a person down in Florida taking charitable money and giving it to a whole lot of Ohio politicians? Mike DeWine, we know, was one of the recipients, but so was Steve LaTourette, Steve Austria, Steve Stivers, Gene Schmidt, Deborah Price, Kirk Schuring. In 2006 and 2008, no state received more support from the PAC coming out of this Navy charity than Ohio politicians. And as I mentioned, Mike DeWine was one of those politicians. And then you also see a pattern from this group that was giving money to numerous attorney generals around the country. Ken Cuccinelli, probably the most famous right now, Bill McCollum, Bob McDonnell, who is now governor of Virginia, Betty Montgomery, Jim Petro. So you see this pattern of a charity that was meant to be for fundraising for Navy veterans. We don't know where all the money went. Most of it is unaccounted for. But the one thing we know is that a lot of the spending going out the other side of this charity was going to political contributions to all the people I just named. We are here today because we think there's so many unanswered questions about what this charity was, what this was all about, why was this giving done, and these questions all remain unanswered. And this case requires a very deep investigation, asking all those questions. And after reviewing the case, after looking at all these connections, and after frankly reading the approach of the current Attorney General's office to this case, we simply think, and it's a matter of basic ethics and a whole lot of other reasons, that the Attorney General's office of Ohio should recuse itself in this case. I don't say that lightly, but I think it's a very common sense response to what's happening. Recusal is a very basic thing you do in the law. Mike DeWine handles many cases right now, including Steubenville, because a prosecutor said, I have a conflict of interest or an appearance of a conflict of interest that undermines my ability to bring this case in a way that's truly independent or that is perceived as independent. And I think when you add up not just the contribution from the defendant to the Attorney General that has never been returned, but also the fact that many of the current Attorney General's colleagues have received similar contributions. And you look at the fact that a person who played a major role in his transition team, former Attorney General Betty Montgomery, was the lawyer for Mr. Thompson only a few years ago. helped him get a clean IRS audit when the IRS was looking into it. You add up all these facts, and it is a clear case where recusal is appropriate. And this isn't about myself or Mr. DeWine. This is about having a criminal justice system where citizens believe that a prosecution is being done independently and vigorously. And that's why we have a system of recusal. Again, that's why oftentimes Mike DeWine will take cases from prosecutors who recuse for the same reason. I think that's clearly the case here. A couple other points. It's beyond just a matter of legal ethics, to me, why this is necessary. My hope, all this money was raised for veterans. And there is so much money unaccounted for that an actual vigorous prosecution of the case will not only get to the bottom of what it was all about and why was all this money being sent to politicians. My hope is identifies where a lot of this money went. Why? So we can take that money and get it back to the veterans groups where we're supposed to go. And if you have an attorney general in this case who is saying, we don't want to look into the politics of this, we don't want to track down which politicians got what, you're basically leaving money out there that was meant for veterans. It's now in the hands of politicians. And I think you're actually letting the veterans down by not chasing down that money. And I'll simply say, in closing, before we open this up to questions, so the reason you have recusal is so you can make sure the public has confidence in your system that a case is being vigorously prosecuted and investigated, and that every question is being asked and answered. And the reason we are here today is because if you look at, if you had told me 2 years ago all the connections I just described that Mr. DeWine had back to Bobby Thompson, I would have said, I think there should be a recusal even then. But now, to me, it's even more clear why that's the case. Because the case has been brought in a way that actually makes the instinct that there's a conflict look like reality. Because if you look at it, and it's in your press packet, if you look at every public statement about this case from the Attorney General's office, it has been whitewashed of all political ties. Every description of the case, every timeline that's been put out, it lays out all these facts, but it always conveniently removes any mention that the money we know about went to politicians. And that's not only true in the public statements, it's true in the actual prosecution of the case. Not one of the people who received contributions has been asked to be a witness, has been questioned as to, do you know this person? There was a reporter from Tampa Bay who was told directly by the Assistant Attorney General that they were intentionally not looking into the political aspects of this case. Was told that in a deposition. There's a transcript of that. And the reporter responded back, and like you, he didn't want to get deposed and be a witness in the case. He said, well, that doesn't make any sense. This is a political case. Why would you not pursue the political angles? And so not only the messaging of this case, but also the prosecution has been cleansed of all the political aspects. That, to me, is literally showing that this case needs to be in other hands. A vigorous prosecution of this case would never remove the political angle. It would be pursuing it. Because something that has this much politics and political giving involved looks like some level of political corruption, and that should be investigated. And citizens expect it to be investigated, and veterans expect it to be investigated.